We're talking the best defenses the Kansas City Chiefs will play in 2023, power ranking that and much more on today's KCSN Update.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Let's talk defenses, Josh. When I said top defenses, the Chiefs do play a lot of really good teams, but when I started looking through that defense list, I said, some of the top defenses in the NFL, they're not playing this year.
It's really interesting because I did a similar thing. It's the inverse of what happened last time I was on this show with you, which was we went through top quarterback. It was like, oh, it's everybody except for Lamar Jackson. Like the Chiefs play almost every one of those top 5, top 10 type of quarterbacks this year. And defensively, I'm a little bit less convinced. The other thing, just sort of like a big picture thing where you're like, hey, let's rank defenses, was that a reminder as to how volatile defense can be. And how bizarre it is when a guy, not to foreshadow too far, but when a guy like Jalen Ramsey moves, you have to kind of readjust your math for just about everything. And we do so much projecting on the defensive side that I feel like doesn't pan out with nearly that consistency. I think offenses we're pretty well attuned to. We all play fantasy football, and certainly now with great folks like your people at DraftKings, there's plenty of reasons to stay invested in the offensive side of the changes and the impact these guys have. But defensively, it's a unit moving together with a couple of guys that demand a lot more gravity, which I think makes this a fascinating question. And I think if I had to look into our crystal ball, Tucker, I would guess that a few months from now, a few of these are going to look really silly, and a couple of these that are left off the list are going to look like top 5 defenses. And that's just the nature of defense in the NFL. I'm really excited.
And I started to dive in, and I was like, okay, how should I determine this? And I was like, do I go off of like EPA per play last year? Because that's a last year metric. The DVOA last year, again, that's a last year metric. So a lot of it is personnel based, as you mentioned. There's going to be additions, subtractions each year, but the defense is a whole unit. And when we were power ranking the best players the Chiefs will face, Ken Swanson and I did not have a single defensive player on there, because when you think about some of the best players, your mind doesn't go towards the defensive side of the ball. Matt Lane had some defensive players. He had Max Crosby, I think, was his only defensive player on that list. So out of all the defensive players he could have picked, Jalen Ramsey was there for the taking as well. I thought Max Crosby was very interesting, a guy who could be the defensive player of the year. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start with number 5, Josh. And I kind of left this up to your discretion too. I didn't give you any direction of how you value the best defenses. So who is your 5th best defense you think the Chiefs will face this year?
So I have the Miami Dolphins at number 5, and it's multifaceted because, and frankly, I'm wondering if I shouldn't have had them higher. This feels like hedging my bets. And it's not just Jalen Ramsey, and it's not just them continuing to evolve a little bit defensively. Their biggest defensive addition of this offseason was not Jalen Ramsey. It was Vic Fangio. That, to me, is hugely fascinating in terms of how this defense evolves, and specifically what it looks like when the Chiefs play the Dolphins in Germany. That entire week leading up is going to be about the international stuff and Tyreek Hill. But the third storyline, I'm calling it in advance, however many weeks ahead that it needs to be, Vic Fangio's defense is going to be fascinating to see. Not just for their matchup with the Chiefs, but as the Dolphins kind of recalibrate defensively a little bit, I think they deserve to be in the top 5, and I have them just at the back end of it. So I haven't seen it yet, but I'm betting on it.
I also have the Dolphins at my number 5 spot. So we're on the same page. Yeah, we're on the same page there with that. The Jalen Ramsey edition is big. I think that you had to put them in the top 5. It wasn't one that I thought was big enough to add just Jalen Ramsey by himself to add him into that top 4, maybe even top 3 that they'll face, because the Chiefs do still face some pretty good defenses, and some defenses that have had a bit more acquisitions, you could say, than that. But Vic Fangio is very interesting. And didn't the Philadelphia Eagles bring him in to help game plan for them in the Super Bowl, which is incredibly odd.
I think that did happen. Boy, that feels like a lifetime ago.
It's not like he's had great success against the Chiefs either. I mean, he's been fine, but it's not like he's dominated the Chiefs to where you would be like, we need to talk to this guy about that.
We need all the best. We need everybody who's got an idea for how to slow down Patrick Mahomes. Did I do this Arnold Schwarzenegger? I don't know what happened.
Sounded like it. It's almost like we need someone who faced Patrick Mahomes twice a year, and that's it. That was the only qualification. But no, Vic Fangio, I do think is a quality defensive coordinator. I'll be interested to see what he does there with the Miami Dolphins, and we're on the same page there. Number 5 with Miami, and number 4. I'll give my number 4. We'll do this. I guess this would be snake style, right?
Snaking it.
Speaking of Vic Fangio, I have the Denver Broncos at number 4. Listen, quietly, the Denver Broncos were a pretty good defense last year. People, I don't remember who said it. I think it was Matty Lane said that people were too busy laughing at Russell Wilson to notice how decent the Denver Broncos defense was. And Pat Surtain, one of those guys that was a really big linchpin in that defense. He played really well last year. Incredibly underrated, I think, in my opinion. Even though he's still incredible and people give him a lot of kudos, I still think he's underrated in that perspective. But facing the defense twice a year will not be very fun. They do add Kyle Fuller, which might be the shell of Kyle Fuller. We'll see if that's actually who it is, and Alex Singleton. They did have Draymond Jones leave, which could be an interesting position that they need, but they were 10th in DVOA when it comes to last year, and I can only see them kind of going up from there with a competent head coach now and a coaching staff that will help them in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I'll spoil it and say the Broncos are OLI on my list, and I think we have found at least a good handful of legit like top 10 sort of defenses the Chiefs face this year. So maybe we spoke too soon, even though it's not exactly the quarterback list. I have the Buffalo Bills at number 4. I think I'm betting a little bit on Von Miller being healthy and looking like himself. I'm betting a little bit on Tre'Davious White being healthy and looking like himself. But at this point, there's a little bit of an earned belief in what that defense has been and can continue to be. It's funny, though, to look back on the huge swing they took on Von Miller. We're talking about this. We've been talking about this for a few days, really on 810 now, over the last couple of weeks. But I am really fascinated by the Bills Super Bowl window. However wide or narrow you think it is at this point, I think last year was probably the year it was the most open to them. They suffer injuries and have their own issues, on and off the field. Not, right now off the field is like, hey, what's going on with Stephon Diggs? Are you guys cool? It's very weird. And so now you have Josh Allen's contract ballooning. I think next year is the real big inflation of that. But this might be their last best chance, if that makes sense, to win a Super Bowl. And I'm buying their defense this year. But if they can't, especially if those just two guys don't stay healthy, this defense takes a step back. I think we're in like real panic mode for the Bills by like week 4, which would be an overreaction. But I think we get there pretty quick.
The Bills are an incredibly interesting, just like case study in Super Bowl windows. And I've kind of compared them almost a little bit to, I don't know if it's comparing them, but do you remember when everyone was worried about the Baltimore Ravens being the team that the Chiefs had to beat? And then it was the Buffalo Bills. Now it's the Cincinnati Bengals. It seems like it's kind of a revolving door of number 1 contenders for the Kansas City Chiefs. And they would love to, I'm sure, find the way out of that revolving door. So, Josh, since we're doing snake draft, all right, give me your number 3 in your snake draft.
My number 3 is staying in this realm of frequent conversation pieces, regular contenders, and maybe higher than most people would have, the Cincinnati Bengals. Because until Lou Anarumo comes and goes without causing a problem, I'm going to begin and continue respecting the Cincinnati Bengals defense in a way that I never do the first time through. I have not. It took me too long to learn the lesson because they are by and large have been a defense full of the red chip players, right? This is something that I'm sure I am borderline just reaching over to the lab feed and yanking it over into this conversation now. So I remember talking to those guys over the course of these years now, plural, of the Chiefs offense versus the Bengals defense and what those intricacies always do. Big Lou always seems to cause some form or fashion of a problem for the Chiefs, even when you don't have all of the household names. So I have them at number 3. That might be kind of tilted specifically to the Chiefs and not just in the vacuum that we've kind of been doing so far. But I wanted to at least make a point to say publicly here in July that I am respecting the Bengals defense when that game comes around at the very end of this year.
It's probably fair. I'm going to give a spoiler too. The Bengals are not on my list, basically because of the vacuum that we talked about. I am a fool. They lost a lot of guys on that defense, but you're right. Big Lou Amarillo might be That's not how you say his last name.
No, but I kind of like it. Can we start calling him like the Armadillo or something? Because he's like made of armor. I don't know.
I said it, and it just kind of rolled off the tongue. I was like, I could just go with it, but there's no chance that anyone would let that go in the comments.
It rolled right up, just like an armadillo.
Yep. Oh, there we go. Big Blue Armadillo. That's who it is.
That's his name now.
Big Blue Armadillo. We talked about power ranking coaches, or not necessarily like head coaches, just like coordinators, coaches that the Chiefs could face, like the most difficult ones. And I think Big Lou was like consensus when we talked about it. Was like he's probably at the top of it. And that's a good factor to consider in them, especially best defenses the Chiefs will face. He's always played the Chiefs really well.
And I'm also I thinking about the coordinator angle. I am having some regrets about something that happens at the very top of my list, because I really do think I made it the logic to push the Dolphins into the top 5. I really think it's a big part of where Cincinnati falls here, and then I'm going to contradict myself here in a little bit with another pick later on. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
We certainly will. Okay, my number 3.
Pretty good defense. I mean,
There's a lot of ways. My number 3 is the Buffalo Bills. We kind of talked about them already with kind of how they are. They had Jordan Phillips, 4th in DVOA last year. I mean, they were a good defense. Josh Allen has always had a pretty good defense with them. That's a conversation for another podcast, probably. They lose Tremaine Edmonds, and I think that's a big one. A guy, linebacker in the middle of that defense. I think that's going to be a hard guy to replace. You can sign as many guys as you want, but trying to replace that guy in that defense is going to be hard. Matt Milano does come back, I believe, on a restructured kind of contract extension type deal. But I kind of went back and forth between where I wanted to put them in this list, because I do think that they're going to be a pretty solid defense. I'm just not sure how good they're going to be. I think that's kind of the Buffalo Bills in a microcosm, right? Like, I think we all think that they're going to be pretty good. We're just not sure how good or where they're going to end up in the end of it in terms of the AFC. So I've got them at my number 3 spot.
Well, now you got to tell us you got it number 2, because I am feeling less confident in my 2 and 1 than I am any other part of my list so far.
2 and 1. This was not an easy list to make.
It's
but
not an easy list. I'm glad you feel the same way. It makes me feel better.
Yes, it was very tough because, again, like I said at the top of the podcast, I struggled with what metrics to use in terms of, like, how do I determine, like, who is going to be good defense and who's not. But at number 2, I have the New York Jets, which might be a surprise to a lot of people, but I think 5th in DVOA in 2022. They're dealing with a kind of a contract situation with Quentin Williams, contract year. It seems to be pretty good to guys who are playing on the defensive line. They've had some, Adrian Amos, Al Woods, Quentin Jefferson as well. They added along the defensive line, so they've had some additions. Sheldon Rankin did leave their defense and go to the Texans, but I mean, I don't necessarily think that that's that big of a deal. They spent a lot of time focusing on the offensive side of the ball when it came to the defense, and they made some acquisitions that I don't think are going to be incredibly huge on the defensive side of the ball, but it's still a very good defense last year. They've got the reigning defensive rookie of the year in Sauce. Sauce has been proven to be very, very good at his job. So I don't see them really taking a step back, if anything, taking a step forward in New York.
At number 2, I have your New York Football Jets. You give me a defense, and look, the funny part of this is I've been talking about coordinators, and if Jeff Ulbrich walked in here right now, defensive coordinator of the New York Jets, and sat down in this chair behind me, I would say, sir, I'm sorry, you seem very lost right now. But Lou Anarumo was in that place a few years ago, and look at him now. So I am with you, and I think this can be as simple as lots of good pieces centered around 2 young superstars in Quentin Williams and Sauce Gardner. You give me those pieces to start with. DJ Reed doesn't hurt. But I really do think that is a super talented group that has the young superstars. And again, we're not talking about the offense, but I think it makes them a fascinating, if not slightly underrated team at this point. Because 2 is, I'm starting to get nervous about the top of my list, because as we talked about at the beginning, I think if this Jenga tower falls, I think it might fall from near the top, which can be kind of fascinating. But I also have the Jets at number 2 for those reasons and the young superstar factor. There are a lot, like I said a second ago, it's not just a cop-out. There are a lot of different ways to deserve a spot high on a list. It can't be because of your coordinator, your talent, your system, whatever.
And I really do like the young guys that the Jets have. I really like Quentin Williams. I like Sauce. Like those guys are fun to watch play football, and I like to have fun watching football. I don't like to watch the Jaguars and Titans on a Thursday. I'm gonna watch it, and I'm not gonna have fun, but I'm still gonna watch it. But I like to enjoy it. So, Josh, this is it. Your number one defense the Chiefs will face, and we might have the same number one. I'm curious to see who. I think we did. What's your number?
Are you gonna tweet out a graphic for this? Do you think? At some point, maybe. Okay. If so, I'd like to make a request. Okay. Because next to where it says for me number one Philadelphia Eagles, I would like an asterisk that says on real graph. Just so we're clear. Yeah. Just so nobody gets hurt about it. Just so the Eagles don't need to tweet about it. I would like to say that the Eagles are number one on my list if they're allowed to play on proper footing and not in a water polo pool, which is apparently where the Super Bowl was played, and the Chiefs got to play on dry land. I must have blocked out a lot more of that Super Bowl than I thought I did. I remember seeing Chiefs defenders slip also, but whatever. Point being, the part where I get concerned here isn't even just in the personnel losses in the middle of the defense. It ends up being, when a team loses like every coordinator and assistant coach they've ever had in the history of the franchise because they're the it team to pirate from, that really can have consequences. And so for me, all of that talent helps to even that out a little bit. If Lou Anarumo would have got ahead, if he was the head coach of the Cardinals right now, I would be much, much, much more concerned about the Bengals defense. The difference for the Eagles is that I do think there's a chance that I could coach that defense to being like a top 15 unit, even now, even losing talent, because what do they do next? They walk on over to the NFL draft and they say, we'll take all your Bulldogs, please. We'll take all your future NFL stars. We'll take all these guys that dropped too far and just fell right into our laps. We'll step in right here. Thank you very little. And then they continue to reload that defense. And so this might be a little bit of a reputation play. I'm not completely blind to the fact that they have suffered some losses and they are incapable of playing on wet ground. Those two big caveats, I still think that they're the best defense Chiefs fit.
I think so too. And I was going through the free agents. I've got my list here. I got my list of all the additions and subtractions that they had as well, because they had a lot of guys on that defense lead. Yeah. You're talking C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Marcus Epps, T.J. Edwards, Kaiser White, guys that got legit snaps in the Super Bowl for them. But, I mean, they added Nicholas Morrow, a pretty decent linebacker, played for the Raiders for a little bit. I think he was at the Bears. Terrell Edmonds, Justin Evans, Greedy Williams, drafted Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Sidney Brown, and Keely Ringo to add to that defense.
Makes me angry.
That's pretty darn good. They had a very good draft, and that was just the defensive players that they drafted, by the way, that I mentioned. That didn't mention the offensive players, but
why bother?
Yes, you don't have to, because you look at that defense, and I think Ken Swanson said this, as we talk about a lot, like what would happen if the 2020 Georgia Bulldogs defense played, the Jacksonville Jaguars? Would they win? We get to see that this year. Because they basically have the 2020 Georgia Bulldogs defense, which, if you're going to have a defense, it's going to be that one, because those dogs are good. I also have the Philadelphia Eagles at number one. 7th in DVOA last year. Again, a metric that's kind of hard to go off of, as I talked about, with all the turnover that they have. They're adding a lot of rookies in there. I mean, Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter is just, again, unfair. And, they've got Jordan Davis still on that team. I think a lot of people forgot about Jordan Davis because he did get hurt like middle of the year, had to set out some games. But no, I think that defense on paper and on real grass looks like it is going to be an absolute buzzsaw for everybody to face up against.
I feel good about that. I feel a lot worse right now about phase 2 of our power rankings, because I am revisiting what I have written down to this point, and I think I'm going to have to make a 3rd, 4th, or 5th round of adjustments here. This has been a very stressful podcast for me.
Yeah, I guess we never really gave out what our second round of power rankings are, but before we get to the second round, Josh, I do want to talk about I'm not gonna throw to an ad. It seemed like I was gonna throw to an ad, but I want to talk.
Okay, it really did. I thought we were putting a tease down.
Would have been really good, but I want to talk.
I thought we were like LeBron and Dwayne Wade setting up an ad read. You talk about a real topic instead?
Well, I just want to talk about some honorable mentions, some teams that maybe we didn't talk about before we really got to the ad break and fixed on to our second.
Sorry, I am so excited about the next topic, and it's really been keeping me up at night. So I apologize. Let's talk about some OLIs.
Who do you have? Who did you have? Who's honorable mention that you didn't have on your list? Because, I mean, I think the only one that you didn't have that I had was Denver, and I didn't have Cincinnati. But other than that, we had the same ones.
Yeah, we had 4 of the same. You talking about Maddie's love of Max Crosby is kind of interesting, just because that has been such a complete defensive wasteland. I don't know that that's going to change. I look to the Chargers and think like, hey, there's some good football players in there. And I still kind of believe in Brandon Staley a little bit. I know that makes me the dunce, but like I still am here trying. But I don't actually believe that their defense is going to turn a corner. Kind of like just flipping through the rest. The Lions, are like have been working on trying to reestablish their defense, but I would like to see it on literally any level yet. I'm going through the schedule again here. Was there anybody else just on the outside for you that didn't? It was your 6 or 7?
I think the Lions were one of them, but I think what caught me up with the Lions is they just like traded Jeff Okudah, and I mean it's like that's a guy
that was weird, and that's
and I'm kind of confused by that. They did draft a linebacker, and was he the first round they drafted a linebacker? Because they drafted a linebacker and a running back.
They went running back, linebacker with their 2 first-round picks. Yeah.
Value at an all-time high for those guys.
It was wild. That was the 2 best moments of the first round. I think I was at Arrowhead in the media room. The actual best moment of the night was when we got to talk to Felix at the end of the night, because he was just so happy to get drafted by the hometown team, right? But the Lions picks going running back and linebacker, when everyone thought that the running back love was a smokescreen, just mayhem broke out, and I don't want to implicate anybody in the mayhem, but it was mayhemful.
All right, Josh, let's take a break, and we'll get to our second topic.
Defense could be good. They got Belichick. I've read they played the Patriots.
I'm not worried about the Patriots.
I completely forgot about that game existing, though. Honestly,
it's like, is it a Monday night game too?
Yeah. Monday Night Football. It's here's the issue, dude. It's after Chiefs Bills afternoon game at home, and before the Christmas Day game against the Raiders. It's the middle game there. They go I'm sure CBS game of the week, Monday Night Football in Foxborough, Raiders at home Christmas Day. Bailey Zappi playing? I don't know. What are we doing?
That team's a mess, dude. They're gonna send him. They're gonna send DeAndre Hopkins, and then they're gonna
quarterback
have Bailey Zappi.
I think, you know what, here's my hot take, and then we can take our break and come back and rank the other thing. I do think that having a non-completely disgraced series of assistant coaches not from the offensive side of the football, I think not having those guys in Mac Jones' ear 24/7 will help him. I do think that I think Bill O'Brien is going to seem like the Patrick Mahomes of coordinating, just based on the fact that he's been in decades of just the worst hell you could think of. That one season, I'm sure that aged him 15 years.
Just because he's not Patricia trying to be an offensive coordinator.
He couldn't be a head coach.
He could not.
That was fun defensive coordinator if you don't think Bill Belichick is the defensive coordinator of the Patriots. If you're a dummy.
It was tough to watch. All right. Now we are power ranking NFL logos. And again, this is what makes power ranking so quirky. I don't give any best NFL logos, most attractive NFL logos, most visually appealing NFL. No, just NFL logos. It is up to Josh's own discretion and my own discretion, and we will give our reasoning why we have these in certain spots. But Josh, why don't you start us off with your 5th NFL logo?
My list is a mess. because I think I might be able to do like a tier list of these logos with some confidence, because I think there are like a small handful of S tier or borderline S tier. You know what, Tucker? I'm making one more change right now.
Okay.
I'm making one more change at number 5. We just lost one. I'll tell you the OLIs later on. But number 5 for me, the Los Angeles Chargers. And here's why they got added into the last second. I've got the logos up on my screen here. Past versions of the Chargers bolt would not have made it. The 17 to 19 bolt may not have. The one that predated it would not have. But this sweet little kind of powder blue around that nice gold, it is simple. It is just the electric arc. It takes something wild like Chargers, which, originally was a horse mascot on the shield. I'm not doing any throwbacks, by the way. If you do, I'm cool with it. They're just too many. It would totally change the game. Next time, give me a week to prepare and tell me we're doing throwback NFL logos, and I got you. But for the modern ones, it's a little too simple to get higher than 5. But of sort of that school of simpler NFL logos, it looks great on the helmet. It's a great color scheme. I'm giving it to the Chargers.
That's a very good one. And you mentioned the old Chargers logo, the bolt predating it, and it has like a jagged tooth on it, and it's just like not very pretty to look at, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's kind of like a little too curved. There's some things about it, but yeah, this new Chargers bolt is good. Chargers, not on my list. I've got number 5. It's a very interesting one. Okay. I have the Philadelphia Eagles. And here's why. I think it's a very good-looking bird logo, and I think it could be higher. The only thing I have it lower, it's the only logo that faces left.
You know why, right?
No, I don't.
Look at those feathers again. It's an E.
No way.
That's why, supposedly, the eagle faces to the left. I love your take here. I will tell you, I kind of like this process of elimination game. This has to be really fun for people listening along. I would think it's fun. My brain's broken, and I love graphic design.
Yeah.
Eagles not in my top 5. Thought about them. Think they're deserving top 5 team. Little superhero-y for my taste. Just a little on the wrong side of superhero-y. But I think it's a really strong logo, and faces left because they wanted it to be an E in the feathers, allegedly. And you can flip it, it's fine, but that's the way it's meant to be seen.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Never saw that. I'm glad that you pointed that out to me. That is fun. I had it at 5 because of that quirk that it was the only one facing left.
Yeah.
Because I thought that, stand out, be different.
Yeah, I love it.
Number 4, what do you got?
Well, we're not snaking anymore, but that seems fair.
Not snaking. Nope.
Number 4 for me, I'm going to give it to the Buffalo Bills. Another late ad in the shuffling near the bottom of my list, and frankly think it could have been higher. Bigger fan of the throwback again, just a buffalo standing there, just that red buffalo that shows up on the throwback helmets. I love that bleep, man. If I was a Bills fan, I would probably not own anything with this modern logo on it because the throwback's so good. But I think a full body animal gives you some points. It's abstract enough. That red stripe has grown on me over the years that makes it stand out a little bit. So it is specifically your Buffalo Bills, Buffalo or whatever. I like it a lot. It's bounced around the bottom of my top 5, but I think it's deserving it.
Bills are on my list. They are not my numbers, but they are not my number 4 though. My number 4 kind of goes against everything else on my list just because I really like the Minnesota Vikings logo. And again, it's one of those that is, I don't think it's like a conventional logo you think of, but there's not a lot of Vikings out there. It might be a little too complex for some people. I think there's a shift to go towards more simplistic logos. They simplified it from years past down to a lot of lines, but I do think that it is still one of my favorites.
They were crossed out of my 4 spot just moments before we began officially power ranking them because you pointed out what I was going to lead to, which is they did simplify their logo in 2013, like you pointed out. Just fewer lines. The braid isn't quite as detailed now, which helps it which helps it progress. This might be another power ranking for later. We're not doing it now, but incredible helmets. Huge fan of just the horn that you're able to take out of the logo. Big fan of the Vikings logo. Just didn't quite make it in for me. I'll take number 3 then, right?
Yes, number 3, your cord.
Calling an audible. I'll tell you who I had at number 1 who just fell to number 3 because I feel like I needed to stick to my guns on something earlier. At number 3, proudly, but just falling from number 1, I have the Arizona Cardinals.
Okay.
I will tell you this is my highest ranking bird, the only bird logo in my top 5 of the NFL's logos. I think it does a much better job of not being too cartoony or too superhero-y while still maintaining some of that fun. Their uniforms were bad. Their new ones also appear to be bad. I'll see when they're on the field. But I do think that 2005, that logo's aged pretty well from the update they did back there almost 20 years ago. If I was just talking to myself right now, I would probably move them at least back up to number 2, but I definitely think they're a top 3 logo. I would be happy to represent that one if I was a Cards fan.
Yeah, that's a good point. That Cardinals rebrand does stand up, and that old Cardinals logo looks a little doopy.
It looks a little doopy. I don't even know if that's a real word or not, but I like it a lot.
It's not my
doopy droopy combo. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I don't have any birds on my list, but my number.
Yeah, the Eagles. Yeah,
Eagles aren't a bird. They're an icon. No, I'm just kidding. Number 3, what I've got is the Tennessee Football Titans, just because, again, what I'm talking about with the Vikings. It's original, it's new, it has that little circle with the 3 stars in it that Tennessee likes to do. The T is made out of swords. It's on fire for some reason. I don't know why, but it's kind of sick. So that's why I've got Titans at number 3.
The Titans are amongst Titans, Vikings, Bills, all previously held the 4 spot on my list. I think it's a good take. It also works either direction. It isn't symmetrical, but it does work if it's inverted. I think technically, I guess the little beveling on the T would be different, but it's real easy to have one of each sort going both directions. I do like it. It's a little wacky, but I think that it does it in a fun way. The stars. As a Tennessee call-out's a good point. I should have given them bonus points for the civic pride.
Stay.
I will. I'll give you my number 2.
Okay. Do it.
Here's the thing. My number 1 was the Cardinals, and they fell to 3. So now I'm looking at 2 and 3 right now, trying to decide who I really want to give this to. I'm going to send a message in a minute that people aren't going to like, but right now I'm going to leave my number 2 team at number 2, the New Orleans Saints.
Okay.
You want to go with the realm of super simplistic, right? The Chargers logo is the simplest, still being an elite logo. There are a couple more that are not on my list, clearly, that we're going to have to come back around to. But the fleur de lis is such an iconic little piece of, I guess, iconography. They could probably do some other variants of it, not just alternates, but like different treatments of it. They could show up in some merch if they wanted to, bring me on as a brand manager or whatever. But it's just every single time, it is bold, it is pointy, and it might be the most tattooable logo in the NFL.
Put it. The Saints were on the outside looking in for my list because it's kind of iconic. It's one of those very simplistic marks, but I've got the Buffalo Bills at number 2. I love the Charging Buffalo. The Charging Buffalo, there's something about it that's incredibly visually appealing to me, and this has nothing to do with the actual teams they put on the field. It's just purely logos, and I love the red, the white, and the blue, patriotic, American, and it also has just that motion with it, with that little red streak. You get that motion with it. So, very big fan of Bills at number 2. So, Josh, you're number 2. Or I guess, no, this is your number 1.
This is my number 1.
Yeah, this is your number 1.
Wow. Can I talk through my I don't want to spoil any of your number 1s here, but I've got a few things I think I need to put out here.
Floor shares. Mm-hmm.
I had the Colts logo outside looking in. Again, it's like a good, simple logo, but a little bit too simple. I do not have the Dallas Cowboys in my top 5. I like the star, but it's a little flat. It's not quite as interesting as the Bolt or the Fleur de Lis. But I do like a team that sticks to its branding in a good way, right? In a way that maybe evolves a little bit, but that they know they have something iconic. So they don't tweak it to make it more realistic. They don't take it off the shield to make it stand out more. They can put it on the helmet and leave the text there if they feel like. They can use any other element. But I know this is a dangerous thing to say. There may not be a better color combination in professional sports than the silver and black. So right now, I am going to give my number one logo to the Raiders. I'm not even giving them a city. I'm certainly not giving it to Vegas. But when I scroll up and down, when I look at all of these logos, which if I haven't mentioned, I have a graphic design minor, so I kind of know what I'm doing. I see good logos. I see good word marks. I see bad word marks. I see bad logos. I see good evolutions, bad evolutions, good color schemes, bad color schemes. But every time, the Raiders logo looks like the Raiders. And there is something about that I deeply appreciate, even as in my childhood, they were the 32nd ranked NFL team that I cared to see on my television. Now I have a real appreciation. Certainly the uniforms would add to it, but I'm not including it. Logos alone, color schemes are undeniable. I got the Raiders at 1, Tucker.
You did say you were going to make a statement, and that is certainly a statement. Raiders do not make my list. I do agree with what you have to say, though.
I'm not excited I'm not excited to hear about this, man. I'm really not.
Yeah, well, I understand. Your logic is sound, and that's really what everyone can ask for, right? When we talk about things on the internet, is just sound logic.
That works.
Correct? I'm pretty sure. Okay, my number one, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I see this Tampa Bay Buccaneers logo with, again, the skull and crossbones. We both have skull and crossbones as our
We love a pirate theme here. We both have swords. We picked the two. Our number ones are the two teams with swords in their logos. Hell yeah, dude.
Swords. I just love. So they did simplify it from where they had it in the past.
Yeah.
The modernized skull, I think, is very good. The swords, the football in the middle, it being a flag is so sick. The flagpole being an actual sword, also sick. So there's just so many cool, I think, manly things about the Buccaneers logo. The color scheme again with the maroon and the silver and the black, and I just like that deep color of red. That deep red is a very powerful color. And they're also going to bring back the creamsicle ones. Again, I didn't put any throwback logos in mine. I think we could have a real conversation when it comes to throwback logos. Maybe we should power rank only NFL throwback logos, because I think there could be some good conversations there. So I've got the Bucs at my number one.
I love it. I think you got a great list, Tucker. This is a challenging exercise, and I know that we are going to have a lot of people who have a lot of things to say about us as this goes out. Can I get your real quick as a 5+1 here? You have a least favorite logo? I don't know that I have mine locked in yet, but I think I do.
Right when you said that, my first instinct was the Commanders, but I think that's unfair. I do think mine is actually mine's the Cleveland Browns, actually, for unoriginality. It's either that or no, it's the Browns. It's the Browns.
I'm gonna give it to this Rams rebrand. I think it sucks. The first time I saw it, I swear to God, I thought it was a Chargers.
That is true. It did look very Chargers-esque when they dropped it. They should have thought about that a little bit more.
In the fall, I want to give, if you know what, not a throwback even necessarily, just the blue and white Ram that the Rams rocked with as soon as they arrived in LA, might have been deserving of a top 5 spot. They really
interesting.
That was a horrible. And also, speaking of bungling a rebrand, Dolphins, you had something special, man.
Yeah.
You had a dolphin wearing a football helmet, and you went, no, let's make it look like a cruise ship logo. Come on.
I was gonna say Dolphins as one of my as my least favorite. I think the Steelers logo is kind of boring, and I will say the same thing about the Jets and the 49ers as well. Not a huge fan of interlocking letters, as I'm wearing a hat with an interlocking letter, and I am a fan of a team that has interlocking letters. Yeah, I just think that's a little played out. But
sure, you got to come by it honestly, which I think gives the Chiefs and the Niners both the ability to stick with that. It's why the Rams be like, yeah, no, we're LA, but with the big yellow swirl now. It's like, hey, you didn't earn LA, man.
Do you remember when they came out with a logo that was basically the Dodgers logo? That happened. It was essentially the Dodgers logo. I'll have to find that because I think it's been scrubbed from the internet, and they're like, this is what we're thinking about, but they're like, no, we're deleting all this all from the internet because they wanted to see how it played out in front of fans.
Well, they still found a way to make a really terrible logo. So
they didn't do great. All right, Josh, I appreciate you joining me on today's KCSN Update presented by DraftKings. Thank you for hanging out, ranking NFL logos. We'll have you back before the season starts to talk maybe some actual football. Who knows?
Sure.
We'll see. But once again, thank you for taking some time.
Thank you for having me, Tucker. It's always a pleasure to power rank with you. Chargers have done it the right way. Rams have done it the wrong way. And clearly the football gods have led them in those directions with, oh, hold on, what's that? No, that's not how it's gone. Oh, dear. Well, maybe the logos don't matter. Bye, guys.